Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Fit Pro Firepower with me, John Latok. In this episode, I want to talk about what I call the bottom of the iceberg. And these are the problems that very few coaches are dealing with, or at least dealing well enough with. And that is why, in general, we are failing to actually get people the results that they want in terms of their overall health, body composition, and so on. So we're going to look at three key areas. Number one is stress and anxiety. Number two is testosterone in guys. And number three is PCOS and also general menstrual dysfunction in ladies. They are very, very common problems, and unfortunately, if you don't learn to deal with this stuff, if you don't learn to coach people through it, your clients are not going to get the results that they want. Okay, so let's get stuck into the episode. The reason I wanted to make this one is because from a fitness professional point of view, if you learn to understand this stuff, if you learn to understand its importance, and most importantly, you learn to actually create solutions and bring these solutions to the market, then you are going to stand out massively. Unfortunately, the fitness industry, particularly because of social media, has become about all this sort of shouting and ranting and raving and who's lifting the heaviest weights and who's throwing barbells around and who can walk on their hands and do muscle ups and all this kind of stuff, which is great. I love all that kind of stuff. It's good fun and it can be part of obviously a varied, effective program. But the reality is that for a huge proportion of people, that stuff is just totally irrelevant. Okay, yes, in some fantasy world, they'd love to be able to do that stuff. But as we know, there are many steps they need to take to get there. But the thing is, nobody is really dealing with what I call the bottom of the iceberg, the things under the water that people struggle to talk about. They struggle to talk about them because they think that everybody else out there is some kind of superhero. They don't suffer from inner health problems. They have literally nothing wrong with them. And they're able to do all this crazy stuff in the gym. And more people are becoming or getting to a point where they think that that is the general state of play. And therefore, if they have something wrong with them, if they have some kind of condition, if they have anxiety problems, then essentially there's something wrong with them. And nobody wants to go through that embarrassment. Nobody wants to talk about that kind of stuff. You know what it's like. Sometimes it's hard enough just going to the doctor and saying, look, I'm sick. I don't really know why I need help. It's just how we are as humans. But when it comes to fitness, we get bombarded with all these images of near perfect people, sort of rippling muscles, low body fat all the time. They seem to never be injured. There's nothing wrong with them and they're full of beans. And the thing is that is a very small percentage of people. And the people who are going to pay you the big bucks, if we're talking about it from a personal training point of view, even group fitness, you can structure certain group programs to deal with particular conditions and have a specific result that isn't, running a 5K or competing in a CrossFit event or anything like that. It can actually be, the result can actually be moving past a particular condition. So as we're going to talk about a little bit later on, I currently am working with a couple of women who suffer from PCOS. I've got women and men who have IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, and digestive issues. So, this stuff is very important, and there are so many people out there who need your help and they're willing to pay to move past that because it affects every single minute of their day. In some cases, it stops them sleeping and so on. So the first area that I want to talk about is very much the foundation, like I said, in terms of stress and anxiety. Why is this so important? Why can we not just almost start from the end and bring people into exercise programs, get them moving, get them following a diet, and then they're going to lose body fat, so they're going to feel better and so on? I understand that. I understand where people are coming from. I understand when people say, if you don't create a calorie deficit, you can't lose body fat. Yes, that is true. However, my argument is that we can come up with the greatest program, the most accurate to the 0.1 percentile in terms of calories, using scientific stuff. But if people are stressed, certain things are happening inside their brains, inside their body in terms of hormonal reactions that will mean that it's virtually impossible for them to stick to a particular diet. Just to give you a couple of examples off the top of my head, there's studies that show, for instance, that if someone has 4 hours of sleep compared to 9 hours of sleep, then the reward centers in their brain fire up much, much more in relation to food. In other words, if they are unable to sleep, if they're not getting enough sleep or enough deep sleep, then when they think about food, when they eat food, the reward centers really fire up, and obviously that is going to increase food cravings, and the more food cravings they have, the less chance there is that they're going to stick to your calorie controlled diet. So whilst the numbers might be right, it's going to be very, very difficult for them to stick to that. So as you know, I've mentioned kind of sleep there, but generally sleep problems come from some form of stress. So I'm not going to go into that too much. It should be pretty obvious. You know, people are running thoughts about their job, thoughts about paying the mortgage and financial problems, relationship problems, all this stuff is just firing in their head. If that's affecting their sleep, it's going to affect their, like I say, the kind of the hormonal reaction to food, the reward centers firing up in the brain, neurotransmitters firing all over the place. To put it simply, they are going to struggle to actually follow that diet. So this is why, for me, just one of the reasons why dealing with stress and anxiety is so important. However, some people don't want to talk about this. They won't bring it up themselves. They're not going to sit in front of you and say, oh yeah, I know sort of body fat's important, but my real problem is that I'm very stressed. You know, they don't see personal trainers as that sort of angle of advice. It's like, well, if I'm stressed and I need psychological help, I'll go and see a psychologist or that kind of fitness professional. Kind of makes sense, but like I said, if you do not understand their stress status, if you don't understand their main causes of stress, and you don't help them to move past those, then the things that you want to give them and the things that they think they want from you just aren't going to be very effective. If somebody's highly stressed, if their cortisol levels are through the roof, then your sort of high intensity circuit program, your assault bike intervals or whatever else, they're just going to they're going to kind of increase cortisol levels even more, and that's going to cause myriad problems. You know, we're not going to go again too much into those. You should kind of have an idea what those will be already. So the thing is that we are constantly living in a world of stress. We are being bombarded by stress literally every second of the day. We have even more new stresses these days with social media, because we get things like FOMO, fear of missed opportunities or fear of missing out, where we see everybody else seemingly living a great life. It makes us feel worse about our own lives. It's another stress. I'm not doing well enough. I'm not performing well enough. I'm not living as well as everybody else. So this will cause constant, it'll put constant pressure on the adrenal glands. The person's going to be constantly in this state of unrest, and they are much more likely to seek the things that comfort them, whether it is, for some people, it is sexual, for some people it is food. I often talk about the 5 Fs. So generally when people are stressed out, they're going to go into one of the 5 Fs, which is fight, flight, freeze, food, or fucking mode. That's essentially what happens. We get pushed back into essentially the sort of reptilian brain that we have in theory evolved from, and we start acting like a reptile. We go into one of those modes. We start arguing with people because it gives us some kind of a stress release. We physically fight people. There might be sort of physical aggression, or for some people it's food, for some people it's sexual addictions, whatever those might be. But as you can see, we're getting further and further away from talking about your hypertrophy program, your strength training program, or your latest greatest circuit. All right, so that is the first thing I want you to think about and to start questioning your clients about. Is there, in my consultation form, one of the first questions I ask is, what are the 5 biggest stresses in your life, and what score would you give them out of 10? Like 10 out of 10 being, absolutely all-consuming, and 0 out of 10 being, it doesn't cause me any stress at all. From there, you can start to know how to guide the conversation, talk to people about, how they can look at reducing the volume. I talk about stress as like a noise that's, really banging in your head, really, like, imagine loud music, like it just stops you being able to think and be able to concentrate. We can't always just throw the speakers out and get rid of the noise, get rid of the stress. But what we can do is say, how do we turn the volume down by 1 or 2 notches? Okay, so for instance, if somebody is saying their relationship with their boyfriend is causing them stress at like a 9 out of 10, then, you know, if they say, look, I don't want to split up with him, I don't want to end the relationship, then we say, that's fine. Okay, so how can you bring that noise down to, say, a 6 or a 7 out of 10? From there, we'll look at how we take it down to a 5 and a 4 over time. So it might be things like, instead of having that, you know, when we start to have a discussion, a disagreement, instead of firing at that person, getting into that sort of fight mode, we go for a walk, we take some long breaths over 5 minutes, we think about how we'd like to approach the situation and go back in. Okay, it's essentially stress management and avoiding that kind of explosion point where you lose all control, people start shouting at each other, you know, there might be physical violence or whatever. So it's not necessarily for you to provide the solutions. Like I said, you're not a psychologist, you're not a relationship counselor, but you can make people aware of how these stresses are going to affect their health, their well-being, and the effect of the nutrition and exercise program. Okay, so that's a very brief sort of inroad into stress and anxiety and why it is so important. We can't simply say, oh, okay, your life's not going very well, you're hating your body, you're hating your life, here's a workout program for 3 times a week. You know, it doesn't work like that. And like we said about nutrition, if somebody is in stress mode and their reaction to stress is to seek comfort food, then talking to them about 1,200 calories or 1,300 calories and macronutrients, you know, it's too much, and they're just not going to listen no matter how much they want to, because these reactions are very much built into our subconscious, and they're hard to resist unless we become a lot more aware and have specific tactics to deal with them. Okay, so that's the first thing, stress and anxiety, very much the foundation of what I'm talking about today, and that, like I said, at the bottom of the iceberg, under the water. So many people are very, very stressed out for many, many reasons, but they won't bring it up unless you ask about it, and then it will give you a much more powerful approach to your coaching. The second thing related to that is the shocking levels of testosterone in most guys these days. We all know that as a man, you know, high testosterone levels are preferable. We feel better in ourselves, we feel stronger, we feel much more sort of ambitious and driven to perform, whether it's at work or whether it's in the gym or sport or anything else. And it generally makes life a lot more pleasurable. And clearly there is the sexual side as well. If you have low testosterone levels, you're not going to be very sexually driven, and that area of your life is going to suffer quite badly. Again, perhaps for men even more so, it's very difficult to talk about these things. It's unlikely that a successful businessman who is overweight is going to come in and the first thing they're going to talk about is sexual dysfunction or a lack of a sex life or anything like that. So you need to have a think as a coach about how you are going to bring that up, how you're going to explain the importance of it, and again, why, if this guy's testosterone levels, if you can't, like within the coaching relationship, if you can't increase those testosterone levels, why they are unlikely to get what they really want, which is improved body composition, more energy, and just generally feeling like a man again. You know, that is a problem for a lot of guys. They literally just don't feel like a man anymore. They feel suppressed. They feel much more emotional, and they do tend to show more sort of female tendencies. So it's important to explore those things. You know, you can certainly, the exercise will help bring testosterone levels up. If you get a guy strength training and following certain protocols, then that will help and that will be part of it. But there are many, many other things that you need to kind of explore in terms of lifestyle factors. Supplementation can help as well, but generally we come back to, if someone is highly stressed out and the adrenal glands are constantly producing cortisol as a stress reaction, then they're going to produce less and less testosterone. Okay, so that is something else that needs to be explored as a coach if you really want to help your male clients, particularly those pretty much over 30. Testosterone levels start to drop almost on an annual basis. So if you deal with any guys over 30, this could be a huge inroad into getting much better results for them and helping them feel better about life. So the final point for this video something that is kind of one of these underlying factors that very few coaches delve into, is around the female hormone cycle, around PCOS, polycystic ovary syndrome, and around sort of female cycle dysfunction, period dysfunction as a kind of a general concept. Again, so many women are suffering from these problems, particularly period dysfunction. A lot of girls, as we know, have been on loads and loads of different diets. They've been on calorie restrictive diets and pretty much any kind of stressful diet. If you stress your body for long enough in a physical manner, then what the body does is it kind of goes, all right, look, we're under stress. We don't have the energy, we don't have the resources to do everything. So basically, we're going to shut down anything that isn't essential. Okay, so as much as we think of obviously periods and pregnancy as essential to the female, to the human race, it's really not essential in terms of keeping this this being alive. Okay, it's not as important as keeping the heart functioning and the lungs and digestion and everything else. So that is why a lot of people, a lot of girls suffer from period dysfunction, because in some shape or form they are putting their body under too much stress. Sometimes it's nutrition, sometimes it is too much exercise. Like a lot of female athletes suffer from this because they're constantly stressing themselves out. They're pushing themselves to the absolute limit in their training. And sure, they might get the outer results, like they look lean, they look strong, they're winning medals. But from a health point of view, in terms of kind of who's likely to be your main clientele, then it really isn't, that's not what your clients are looking for. They're not concerned about medals. They're like, I just want to be healthy. I want to function properly. And it may be the case that they want to get pregnant. So if you've got people who are wanting to get pregnant but they're struggling, then obviously this is an area you need to understand. You need to know if there's any kind of dysfunctions like this. So be aware of that, because some people will come to you and say, I want to get fit and healthy because I want to have a baby. Some people won't tell you that. They will just come to you and thinking, well, this person will give me the training and the exercise, the nutrition, that will get me fit, and therefore I'll be able to have a baby. But they can be misunderstanding your role in the process. And if you don't know that, if you don't know what they've been doing before, and you're like, yeah, okay, let's put you on a really hard training program that's going to get your body fat down, etc., then you're gonna end up not helping them. You're not going to take them in the right direction. The other thing I mentioned was polycystic ovary syndrome, PCOS. More women than you think suffer from this, and without going into all the science of it, just some sort of key symptoms are elevated testosterone levels, insulin resistance, so obviously that brings blood sugar problems, and it can cause a lot of psychological issues as well as physical issues. So for instance, obviously there's this craze now, everyone should be doing heavy lifting. Often if you get a girl with PCOS doing too much heavy lifting, likelihood is, because her testosterone levels are a little bit higher, she's going to gain lean muscle more easily. If she's one of these people that is focused on the scales and watching her weight, and she's come to you because she wants to lose weight, which is very much a struggle for girls with PCOS, then you're essentially taking her in the opposite direction to where she wants to go, and she could end up feeling even worse. It also means that, if you don't know about this, if you don't understand about PCOS, then dietary advice is likely to be incorrect. You need to start thinking about how to shape the nutrition plan to take account for insulin resistance and so on. It will affect the training, how often they train. For instance, it might be more appropriate, if they can manage it, to do more frequent training sessions of shorter duration. Maybe we're saying, okay, well, I want you to train twice a day for 15-20 minutes, so we get that natural sort of exercise induced insulin elevation. It will actually help reduce the sort of insulin resistance. It will make them more insulin sensitive. So that could be a process that will get them much better results than you just going with your standard, 3 hourly sessions a week. Okay, so we could talk about any of these issues in much more detail, but I just wanted to highlight them because they're three things that very much run underground, and clients or prospective clients don't like to talk about it. Even current clients, maybe you've been working with somebody for 2 or 3 years, their life's been great, they've been training well with you, and then all of a sudden you're like, I don't really understand why the results don't seem to be coming quite so much. And they might be embarrassed to tell you that situations have changed. Maybe they suddenly hit financial difficulties, relationship difficulties. So part of your role as a coach is to keep reminding people and educating people why these things are important, and why it's important that they come to you and say, look, I'm starting to have these problems. How do you think we should change the training approach and change the nutrition approach? Okay, so have a look at what you're doing. Have a look at how you are going through consultations, how you are assessing people's stress levels and finding out about their conditions. Do you know how to deal with these conditions? It's not because you've got to try and become a doctor and deal with every medical condition on the planet, but there are certain things that you can do better as a coach, you can do better as an exercise instructor, if you want to use that term, when you know that these things exist, and you can work with, maybe there's medication involved, whatever, there's other therapies involved. You can work with these things rather than just blindly going ahead with what you think you know about fat loss, what you think you know about body composition. Every situation is different, particularly where these kind of medical conditions exist, psychological conditions exist. It very much changes what is the most appropriate way forward. Okay, I hope you enjoy that. I hope you find that useful. I hope it gives you food for thought. I'm John Latok. This is FitPro Firepower. Make sure you go to fitprofirepower.com. Get the free ebook that's available through that website. That will give you some really cool insights into how to develop your business, how to approach your coaching, and make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel, and then you get more episodes like this. Take care, guys. I'll see you soon.